As we all know, the Outlast Trials is a prequel to the first game, but what would it have been like if the trials were still going on during the time Outlast 1 takes place? Today I want to talk about just that, how I think the Outlast 1 enemies would actually work in the trials. The first characters I want to get out of the way are the variants, because these guys are obvious. They'd just be the grunts, and they'd probably get turned into other specialist X-pop. Like, some of them would end up becoming hard grunts. Some of them maybe even would end up becoming big grunts with surgeries and stuff. Maybe some would become pushers, some would become night hunters. There's that pyromaniac guy in Outlast 1. He'd probably end up being a pitcher. Most of them would just end up as the normal machete wielding grunts, but yeah, some of them would get turned into other specialist X-pop. Now Chris, I feel like everyone would want him to be a prime asset, but he couldn't be one because he doesn't have enough personality, doesn't have enough charm. He kind of just mumbles all the time, and that's just he can't be a prime asset, unfortunately. But he's very dangerous too, and so that's why I think he'd sort of be a Jaeger, or at least like a Jaeger 2.0. They could maybe put the Jaeger equipment on him, so he would literally just become a Jaeger 2.0. Or they could just not do that at all and just put him in the trials just normally how he is usually, because he would still be a menace. This guy like tears people's heads off like super easily, so he doesn't really need any upgrades or anything. You could even argue that the Jaeger equipment would even like nerf him, it would make him weaker. But I definitely think like Chris would be a sort of character where like the alarms would go off just like Jaeger. You'd hear that and it's like, oh crap, Chris is here. I don't know what his unique abilities would be though. I think if Chris was in the trials, I think the main gimmick that should be present in his gameplay is the fact that he can tear people's heads off. I think if he gets you, he should be able to tear the reagent's head off and they should just be dead forever. So I don't think there is like a character like that in the game where they can just kill you and you can't be revived. And so that would make Chris so scary, because if he gets you once, if he kills you once, he's just going to tear your head off and you're gone forever. And I think that'd be super scary, and I think it'd be pretty cool. So he'd either be a Jaeger 2.0, or he'd sort of be this X-pop that's in the same tier as the Jaeger and is able to just kill you forever basically. Now moving on to an actual prime asset, it's Trager. Trager would be so perfect. He's like the perfect prime asset. He would work so well in the trials. If he was alive during the time the trials were taking place, like this guy he'd be so perfect. He would 100% be in the trials if he was alive during the time the trials were taking place. He would. Murkoff would see him and be like, yeah, perfect, we're getting him in. For like his trial environments, he'd probably have a hospital, right? I think that'd be pretty cool. In terms of gameplay though, it's a little harder because, I mean, how are you supposed to give him unique gameplay? All the prime assets, they have a unique gimmick to them that makes them threatening. But for Trager, he's kind of just a guy with big scissors, so like, how do you give him a unique sort of power? I was maybe thinking that on the hospital trial, maybe there's all these X-pop or just normal people who are like tied down onto stretchers and stuff, screaming for help and stuff, and if you run past them, maybe they call out for Trager, or maybe Trager can go up to one of these people on the beds and interrogate them, and once he interrogates them, he can just know where the reagents are or something like that, so he can have better tracking. I think a better gimmick for Trager though would be to consider the fact that he is a surgeon. Not really, I don't think he has any medical training, but considering like his whole surgeon thing, maybe when he attacks reagents, he targets certain parts of the body. So maybe if he hits you in the leg, you can't use your leg for the rest of the trial, so you'll just be limping everywhere, and you'll just be super slow for the rest of the trial. Or maybe you can like heal up and then it will fix it. Maybe if he hits you in the arm, you can't throw bricks anymore, or just stuff like that. I think it'd be pretty cool. It's kind of hard to come up with a unique gimmick for him, because again, like, he's just like a naked guy with scissors, like, I don't know. But yeah, this guy, he'd be perfect, man. Like, I kind of wish we could like time travel and then just bring Trager back to the 1950s. Oh man, he'd be so much fun. He'd be such a good prime asset. Just make sure that on Trager's hospital trial, there's no elevators, okay? Another great prime asset though, Eddie Guskin. Again, perfect. He'd be so perfect. He'd work so well. Now for his trial environments, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to pick out an obvious one. But Eddie's he's a very romantic guy, so I was thinking maybe like a church, and maybe the whole trial is centered around a wedding, and maybe the reagents have to sort of destroy the wedding or make sure that the wedding takes place, something like that. Like the trial victim will be like a groom, and you have to take the groom to the bride, and maybe Eddie is jealous of this and he's the actual groom and he's trying to stop all this. I don't know, something like that. I think it'd be really cool. I can imagine too, like the trial starts in like a graveyard and you have to work your way out of the graveyard and then you can get to the church, something like that. I think it'd be really cool. Eddie, honestly, he has a potential to have some really unique trial environments. I also think it's funny because his trial environments would definitely be like 1950s, 1960s sort of. They'd have like that sort of vibe. And it's funny because the Outlast Trials is set in that time period. So again, like if we could time travel Eddie back to the 1950s when Outlast Trials is taking place, he'd be perfect. He'd be at home. He'd love it there. Now Eddie does have the same problem as Trager because, like, what would his unique gameplay be? What would his gimmick be? I have no idea. It's even harder for Eddie. Like, I don't know. He's kind of just a big guy and he kills you. Actually, I'm forgetting a really big major part that he does, or maybe a single part of the body that he likes to take away. But how do you like put that in the gameplay? It does. Oh no, guys, he chopped my willy off. What am I gonna do? Maybe his unique gimmick could be that he targets female reagents. That's a joke, by the way. I don't. How'd that even work? I mean, it'd be lore accurate, but I mean, in gameplay, it just wouldn't work. I actually came up with the idea of giving him throwing knives. I know he doesn't use throwing knives in Outlast 1 or anything, but I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of fitting for him, and I'm struggling here. I can't think of a single sort of gameplay gimmick to give him, so I think throwing knives would maybe be cool. I don't know, but yeah, apart from gameplay, Eddie, he'd be so perfect. He'd fit so well as a prime asset. I can just imagine sneaking through an area and then you just hear someone call you a slut from behind, and then you just see Eddie there and he's chasing you. Oh, it'd be so cool, and it'd be so scary. I still don't understand why we're trying to find Father Martin. Now the twins are an interesting, right? Because you'd think maybe they'd just be a normal grunt or something, but I actually think it'd be cool if they were put on the same tier as Jaeger. So these two, they'll come into the trial together, and alarms will sound just like Jaeger, right? Because they're like a super mega threat, and you should be crapping yourself when they come in. What I'm thinking, how they'd work, right, is they'd basically both just be like imposters that are walking around with their knives charged, if you know what I mean. So if you run into them, they'll just insta-kill you, and they're just super silent. I think that's how they work in Outlast 1, and I think that'd be so scary. There aren't many enemies in the game who are sneaky. I think like the only character who's sneaky is Lilia. So I think adding more characters like this who can potentially sneak up on you, it'd make the trial so much scarier. Suddenly you have to deal with two butt-naked dudes who you could easily just go around a corner and run into and just get one-shotted. It's pretty scary. And I think it'd be really cool. You could make them really slow like Jaeger. They obviously wouldn't be as strong as Jaeger, so they wouldn't be able to bash down doors very easily. But I think it'd be so scary, and it could create some really unique encounters. Imagine like going down a hallway and you see one twin walking towards you and you're like, crap. So you turn around and then the other one's behind you and they're gonna like corner you. It'd be really cool. That's another unique thing too. Their AI could be really unique, where they could both travel like together, or maybe they'd just separate, I don't know, but you could do some really unique stuff with their AI and make them have sort of tactics and stuff. I think these guys would be great, and they have potential to be like really, really scary. Now Frank is a weird one, because I really want to make Frank a prime asset, like so bad, but his whole thing, he's just kind of a hungry guy, isn't he? He's just a bit hungry. I don't know if you can make a prime asset out of someone who's just a bit hungry. So I don't know, I don't think he has enough charm to him to be a prime asset. But I was thinking that maybe Frank would create his own class. Like Murkoff would see him and they'd be inspired by him, and they'd make a whole new Xbox specialist class around him. And I think this class would be called the Cannibal. Now what this class would do is, if you're hit by them, you'll start bleeding, and when you start bleeding, they can follow the blood trail. So they basically, if you get hit by them, they're just going to follow you for the rest of the trial until you heal. and stop bleeding out. If Frank was a prime asset though, I think like a meat plant in trial environment would be so cool. Like he would probably be a really cool prime asset, but I don't know. I feel like he just doesn't have enough charm to him. But I think, imagine like a meat plant trial, that'd be really, really cool. I think that would work so well. The Walrider is another weird one. In fact, realistically, they wouldn't put the Walrider in the trials because they just wouldn't be able to contain it. But if it was in the trials, at least in gameplay, it would probably just be a reskin of the Skinner Man, right? It would just, instead of, when reagents get psychosis, instead of seeing the Skinner Man, they see the Walrider maybe. They could probably do something like that. I feel like that makes sense in terms of the lore and in gameplay. Now next I want to talk about Father Martin, because I think he'd actually be quite interesting. He'd most likely end up just being a reagent, but he could end up being sort of like this Amelia figure where he starts a revolution. He starts like that whole religion in the trials, and it ends up just riling everyone up. He could end up just being a trial victim as well. Maybe on Eddie Gluskin's trial. That would maybe be sort of fitting. And I mean, who knows? Maybe he could even be a prime asset. I think like a priest prime asset would be pretty interesting. Father Loutermilch in the trials? Maybe. Now the next character I want to talk about is Jeremy Blair. And something I just want to say is, I always thought this guy's name was Jeremy Blake. I don't know why, I think I've said that in videos before, where I've called him Jeremy Blake, but I think his name is Jeremy Blair. I don't know, this guy looks like Jeremy Kyle anyway, so maybe I'll just call him that. Maybe Jeremy Blair could start the Jeremy Kyle show in the trials. I think some of these guys need some relationship advice. But realistically, this guy, I think he's just going to be a trial victim, honestly. I think Murkoff are just going to use him as an example. I think he'd actually be a really, really cool trial victim. A lot of the trial victims in the actual game, in the actual Outlast trials, they're all usually just like innocent people, and you feel bad for killing them. So I actually think it'd be pretty unique if maybe later down the line we get a trial victim who's sort of like Jeremy Blair, where they're super unlikable and maybe we actually enjoy killing them. Honestly, I just wanted to talk about Jeremy Blair because I hate him, and I think it'd be cool if he was a trial victim and we got to kill him. That'd be really cool. Speaking of characters I don't like, Andrew the Freaky Scientist, make this guy a trial victim please. I want revenge because he licked me in the Whistleblower DLC. Why did he lick me? I hate him. Just let's kill him, that'd be fun. Lastly, I want to talk about our two protagonists and how they would work if they were in the trials. Miles is interesting because realistically he'd just be a reagent. He'd be a very good reagent. But I think he could potentially be an X-Pop, potentially. Because if you read Miles's notes, he's a very, very aggressive guy. When he's scared, he seems to just get really aggressive. And although he obviously doesn't have the strength to defend himself. I mean, like, if you're someone that gets angry when you're scared, I think like that's good material for an X-Pop, right? I don't know, I think he'd be a really mean grunt or something. I think he'd be pretty scary, but realistically, he'd be a reagent. And as I said, I think he would be a very, very good reagent. I think he would definitely rebirth. Honestly, he'd potentially... I could see him just being a reagent forever. Like, he wouldn't even rebirth. I feel like he'd just get used to the life and just stay in the trials as a reagent, just constantly doing trials until he gets unlucky and dies. But I think he'd be like just a really good reagent, and he'd probably like just be super selfish. I could imagine him betraying a lot of other reagents so he can save his own skin. Yeah, Miles would be mean in the trials either way, even if he wasn't an X-Pop and he just was a reagent. On the other hand, Waylon, there's no two ways about it. He'd just be a reagent, wouldn't he? He'd just be a reagent. And I think he would be a good reagent, but he'd probably end up getting himself killed because he'd be too nice. So he's kind of like the opposite of Miles. But maybe that determination that Waylon has to see his family again would end up pushing him to rebirthing. But obviously, you know, that's not going to go well for him because he's just going to end up being a sleeper agent. So this guy's going to get a bad ending either way. So yeah, those are all the characters I wanted to talk about. I don't know if I missed anyone, I don't think I did. But yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed, check out my other videos. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye!